Well, good morning. Welcome to Debbie's Back Porch. So glad to have you with us. This is the next in my senior nutrition series, and tonight I'm making a dessert that is just wonderful. This is my butternut custard made with butternut squash. It can be made in small portions. It's relatively inexpensive. It's pretty low carb. It's easy. What's not to love? And did I mention that it's just yummy? Before we start cooking, if you like our videos, give us a thumbs up and subscribe and click the little bell icon at the top right. You'll get a notice when I post new videos. Now let's make something luscious. So this is how I cook my butternut squash, and I'm sorry I didn't film cutting it, but I cut it long ways with a very sharp knife, very carefully, and scoop out the seeds. Place it face down in a baking dish. I have my oven preheated to 350, and I'm going to add a little water to this because I want it to cook and be soft. Once it's soft, I'll peel it. They're very difficult to peel. My mother said she had to stop eating them because she couldn't peel them, and I said, there's got to be a better way to do this. So after an hour and 20 minutes, it's soft and easy to peel. And it may take you an hour 40, it may take you an hour 10. It just depends on when it's soft, and I stuck a fork in it to check and make sure it was soft. Some of this skin will peel right off with your fingers, and some of it you have to give it a good start with a knife. I've never had much luck using a vegetable peeler once it was cooked like this, so I just use a knife. I suppose you could scoop it out and not peel it at all, except this skin is so thin. It's really not hard, and I don't know how it would work to just scoop it out, so I just do it this way. Now you'll notice I cut the long part away from the bell part. The only reason I did that is because it's easier to peel it in two pieces. And then I'll move it over here to the bowl and cut it into little chunks. Pretty small, because what I'm going to make is a custard. If you wanted to cook it some other way, you might leave it in bigger chunks. But I'll just flip through this real quickly, see how soft it is, and it's still firm. And notice that it doesn't have an awful lot of liquid. Some squash, when you cook them, have a lot of liquid. Now this seed compartment is still going to have a little leftover stuff in it, and I've never been able to get it totally clean until it was cooked. And it easily just scoops right out. You know, for a really quick side dish, just cook them this done, leave them whole, put them back in the oven with some brown sugar and butter. You can do so much with butternut squash. And I've only cooked one, but I would cook a bunch at one time and put some in the freezer when they're in season and I can get them really cheap, or grow them. So let's start making our custard. I've got a 1/3 cup of Sukrin, 2 eggs beaten. Sukrin is an artificial sweetener, brown sugar. This is 5 ounces of heavy whipping cream. And here is 1 cup of the butternut squash that I reserved. I put the rest in the fridge for another dish. And this is pumpkin pie spice. If you don't have pumpkin pie spice, and this is vanilla. If you don't have the pumpkin pie spice, you can mix a 1/4 teaspoonful cinnamon and 1/8 of a teaspoon of cloves and 1/8 of a teaspoonful of nutmeg and get pretty close, and it'll be yummy. Some folks put ginger in too, but I don't. So the cream was heated to about 85 to 90 degrees. I don't heat it all the way up. Heavy whipping cream is ultra pasteurized, so it doesn't have to be scalded as you do in many recipes. But if you get it above about 85 to 90 degrees, it's going to scramble your eggs. So check your temperature. It would be body temperature, just like for making yeast bread. So I'm just going to beat the eggs in until they get just a little, till the whole thing gets just a tiny bit frothy. Then I'll put in a 1/2 teaspoonful of vanilla. And I guess you can tell the measurement's not critical. I love vanilla. I usually put in too much. So stirring that in. Now, as I'm making this, you're going to notice this is very close to a pumpkin pie recipe. I'll add my Sukrin in now. Now, that's 1/3 cup of Sukrin, and if you use something other than regular sugar or Sukrin or Splenda, I don't really know how to tell you to measure it, but those things all measure the same, and 1/3 cup works. And this is a 1/2 teaspoonful of my pumpkin pie spice, or the separate spices if you choose to do that. Mixing those in. So back to pumpkin pie. This is very close to a pumpkin pie recipe. You can do this with any kind of winter squash. You could do it with pumpkin. I just particularly love butternuts, and I love acorn squash. So here's the difference. The difference is no crust. It's a little bit lower carb, and you can make small portions. When we get up to becoming seniors, when we're officially seniors and before, we need to watch our carbs. And yes, we all need to watch our carbs. High carb diet, low fat diet is really not good for your brain health. More and more research is showing that. So I rarely make a pie with a crust anymore. By the way, I'm just going to hit this with a stick blender. I rarely make a pie with a crust anymore because I can't really eat much crust, and because if you make a whole pie and you're eating with just 1 or 2 people, it's likely to go bad. You'll lose some of it. So to me, I make this recipe and put it in these little ramekins, and then I have individual servings. They'll keep 2 or 3 days in the fridge. They freeze nicely. Just let them thaw overnight in the fridge, or you can just make half a batch. You don't have to make a whole pie. So about 15-20 seconds with the stick blender, and you get it really smooth. And you can just do the whole thing start to finish in your food processor. So this makes 4 servings. These are 6-ounce ramekins, and I'll just divide them out evenly. Now my oven is preheating to 350, and these are going to cook about 40 minutes. You'll test them just to make sure that they're firm, not dry. And if they need to cook just a little bit more, they can. But I'd start with 40 minutes in the center of the 350 oven. And I'm going to bake these like I would a creme brulee or any kind of a custard. I'm going to put the ramekins in a baking dish, and then add some hot water to the baking dish. And that just makes them, I don't know, it changes the texture. I'm sorry, I like the science of cooking. I don't know the science of why that happens, but I think it just spreads the heat out more evenly than if you just put them directly in a pan without the water. So this is going to work out just about perfect. And I didn't tell you in the list of ingredients, but I'm going to add some nuts to this. And there are a couple of variations you can do. I'm using walnuts, you could use pecans, you could use almonds, or if you really want to, you can put the brown sugar on top, and the Sukrin works for this, and torch it just like you would creme brulee. And I have done that only once, and it was really good, but it's a lot of trouble, and you have to chill it first. And I'm not going to chill these tonight. I'm going to have them for dinner. So I'm putting about 2 tablespoons full of walnuts on top. And as I say, they are totally optional, but they are so good, and they add a little crunch to it. And as a person who watches carbs, I find that having some crunch to the food actually makes you feel fuller. It's more satisfying. So I add crunch when I can. So this is hot water right out of the faucet, just as hot as I could get it. And as I say, 40 minutes in the oven at 350, and this is what you get. Now, we're going to test this. I actually already did, but I'll show you. I'll close up here. I'm just going to test it to make sure it's firm. If your butternut squash or pumpkin was watery, had a lot of liquid in it, you would have strained it before you started, because it's not going to get firm if you have a lot of liquid in it. So you see it's firm, it's not watery, it's not dry. And that's what we're looking for. And you want to take these out and let them cool. You can eat them at room temperature, which is what I'm going to do. Or you can chill them an hour to 2 or overnight. I'm just going to take these out and put them on a rack so they'll be cooling while we have our dinner. And just do this as soon as it is safe to do it. You don't want to get burned. So I have grandkids here for dinner. We're going to go ahead and eat, and then I'll be back. And this is what we have. I want to show you the texture that you have. It firms up a little more after it cools. And please excuse my hands. I have yet to figure out how to do this without getting my hands between the food and the camera. But this is yummy. I mean, it really is yummy. If you like pumpkin pie, you're going to love this. It's a bit lighter than a pumpkin pie. Not quite as dense. With the nuts, it's just delicious. I hope you try this recipe. I hope you like it. And I hope to see you again tomorrow.